Ma'am, you're trespassing. Step back now.
The battle for the beach cabin. I was halfway through slicing a juicy watermelon on my beach cabin's deck, the salty breeze ruffling my hair, when I heard Ida frantic jangling of metal at the front door, like someone was trying to jimmy open a vending machine with a coat hanger. I leaned around the corner, and there she was, Linda, the self-appointed queen of the Seaview Homeowners Association, her oversized visor casting a shadow like a vulture's wing. Her HOA badge dangled from a lanyard, flapping as if it granted her supreme authority. She was stabbing a shiny brass key into my brand-new lock, her face twisted in determination. I'd seen her prowling the dunes since dawn, clipboard in hand, eyeing my cabin like a hawk circling prey. But this was a new low. I leaned against the railing, a mix of amusement and exhaustion washing over me, as she gave the handle one last dramatic yank. Flustered, her cheeks flushed red, she whipped out her phone. Her voice carried down the porch, sharp and practiced from years of HOA tyranny. Yes, I need to report a trespasser illegally occupying a restricted cabin. She had no idea her call was about to backfire spectacularly. 3 minutes later, as she stood smugly at the foot of my porch, arms folded, phone still pressed to her ear, the front door creaked open. Out stepped my son, Michael, in full police uniform, badge gleaming, boots thudding against the wooden floor. Linda's mouth dropped open like she'd swallowed a jellyfish. I took a bite of my watermelon and gave him a nod. Hey, son, took you long enough. And that's when the real show began. It all started 3 weeks earlier, before the summer storms rolled in and before Linda's HOA crew amped up their crusade from finding overgrown lawns to staging full-on beach surveillance. I'd inherited the cabin from my grandfather, a gruff fisherman who built it in 1969 with his own weathered hands. He'd have laughed himself silly watching Linda's meltdown. For decades, the cabin sat quietly on the edge of the county's beach preserve private property, legally grandfathered, and mined by every right. Then came the development boom. Condos sprouted like weeds, and folks in golf carts and pastel polos started buzzing around the bay. The Seaview HOA, led by Linda, began stretching its jurisdiction inch by inch, claiming the beach cabins as their own despite deeds and county lines saying otherwise. I ignored their first few letters-petty demands to remove unapproved wind chimes or pay fines for nonsense violations. Then came the door tags, followed by a mandatory meeting I skipped to rebuild my dock. Linda tried everything short of breaking in. Until that day. That morning, she must have thought her shiny HOA-issued key would open my door like some magical scepter. She probably pictured herself catching me in the act of what? Living too peacefully? Drinking tap water without a permit? But she hadn't counted on the new lock I'd installed or the fact that my son, Officer Michael Harris, would answer her 911 call. Michael had just transferred to the Coastal Enforcement Division, and I hadn't seen him in uniform since his academy graduation. When he stepped out and said, "Hi, Dad," Linda's confidence wilted like soggy lettuce. She stammered about jurisdiction and access codes, but Michael, calm as the tide, asked for her ID and if she knew she was on private property outside HOA boundaries. That was the start of her unraveling. The absurdity had been building for weeks. Linda started by lurking at the beach trail, counting how many times I walked my dog, Rusty. Once, she snapped a photo of my propane grill and cited me for illegal flame usage on my land. She even printed maps with dotted lines around my cabin, like she was planning a military siege. I let it slide until she crossed the line with her key stunt. That's why I'd upgraded the lock and added Michael to the cabin's dispatch list. When she called 911, she unknowingly summoned my son. The moment Michael stepped out was pure poetry. He stood tall, unfazed by Linda's flailing arms and shrill protests. She waved her HOA badge like it was a federal warrant. He didn't blink, just asked if she knew she was attempting to access private property. Then she slipped, claiming the cabin belonged to the HOA now because of a vote. Michael called for backup not because he needed it, but to document everything. Linda's face turned crimson as 2 more officers rolled up in a beach patrol cruiser, her fantasy crumbling faster than a sandcastle at high tide. She'd brought a photographer, likely hoping to post a triumphant social media victory, but her friend lowered the camera as Linda's voice hit a fever pitch. She insisted Michael didn't know the rules. He raised an eyebrow, walked her to the county's property markers, and pulled up a GPS reading on his tablet. When she saw the cabin was 100% outside HOA bounds, her bravado deflated. That should have ended it. It didn't. The next day, the beach was eerily quiet, like the calm before a storm. I was fixing a loose gutter when Linda's minions arrived, 3 of them in matching seafoam polos, clipboard in hand, looking like they were auditioning for a reality show. They didn't knock, just stood by the porch, murmuring until I set my hammer down. "Can I help you?" I asked, already bored. The clipboard guy, puffing out his chest, announced they were there to inspect under some HOA charter clause. I pointed to the property marker. "This isn't HOA land." The woman in sunglasses chirped. "It is now. We voted to redraw the borders." I asked if they'd notified the county. Silence. The third guy started snapping photos of my porch furniture and the old buoy I'd nailed to the railing. "Documenting code violations," he muttered. I considered the garden hose, but let them leave with their photos and a warning that they'd get a letter. The letter arrived 2 days later, accusing me of unregulated deck furniture and environmental noise disruption from my wind chimes gifts from Michael for Father's Day. I pinned it to the fridge and went back to woodworking. Linda wasn't done. She was just regrouping. Her next move was a knock at the door. Linda stood there with a man in khakis and a woman with a laptop, offering a solution, a forced buyout. The HOA wanted to turn my land into a public beach wellness retreat. I asked if they'd read the deed or the county filings. They blinked. I pointed out the cabin's legacy land use permit, predating their HOA. Linda's smile flickered, but she launched into a speech about modernization. I offered them lemonade. They declined, leaving a buyout offer with a circled deadline. I pinned it to the fridge. I called Michael that evening. He was quiet, then said, "They're changing the board, Dad. They're rewriting reality." He was right. They underestimated how much I knew, how much Michael could access, and how deeply we were tied to this place. This wasn't just a cabin, it was history, memory, sawdust, and salt. The next day, Linda slid a final notice under my door, threatening property seizure through community reclamation. I laughed, sliced another watermelon, and thought about how the tide doesn't care about HOA letterhead. 2 mornings later, Michael's truck pulled up. He was off duty, in jeans and a windbreaker, but his eyes scanned the dunes like he was still on patrol. I handed him coffee and told him about the notice. He pulled out his tablet, flagged the county records, and said, "If they try anything, it'll ping my system." Then Linda arrived in a rented white SUV with an HOA magnet, followed by 2 golf carts hauling folding chairs and a portable podium. A podium. She was staging a protest. Signs staked in the sand read, "Protect our shores," and "No private porches on public land." Linda took the mic, her voice screeching through an amplifier. "This beach belongs to all of us," she declared, painting me as a selfish recluse. Michael muttered, "She's performing for cameras." Sure enough, a drone and a photographer were capturing it all, spinning a narrative for social media. I stepped to the property line. "Linda, you're trespassing." She smirked, claiming it was a public demonstration. Michael cited public disturbance codes, noting we'd filed noise complaints. The crowd faltered. Linda huffed, "Fine, we'll leave for now." But her steely glare said this was far from over. That evening, I dug out my grandfather's binder permits, maps, notarized letters proving the cabin's protected status. I found a conservation clause limiting construction and noise within 20 feet of my property line, meaning Linda's protest broke environmental codes. I scanned everything, emailed copies to Michael, and prepared for a counterstrike. Facts, not fury, would win this. 3 days later, a black government-plated car rolled up beside Linda's SUV. A man in a Navy suit, Martin, introduced himself as the HOA's legal consultant. He claimed eminent domain for a preservation board partnership. I invited them onto the porch, laid out my binder, and pointed to the legacy exemption. Martin's confidence faded. Linda insisted the board might overlook something. I suggested they hadn't. They left, Linda muttering about community rights. At the county records office, the clerk, Doreen, confirmed someone Linda had tried and failed to file a zoning appeal. I got a copy with her signature, stamped rejected. That evening, Michael read it and suggested going public. I didn't want viral fame, just peace. But he was right, Linda wouldn't stop unless exposed. A drone appeared the next morning, buzzing over my porch. I waved it off with a broom. Linda stood by her SUV, controlling it. I called Michael, who alerted the FAA. 2 hours later, Linda got a warning for unauthorized surveillance. That night, I sat on the deck, the wind chimes singing, feeling like I'd built a wall of truth. Then came a sneaky move, a laminated sign staked near my porch, declaring a coastal reclamation zone. Its QR code led to a shoddy website with drone photos and lies about my cabin. I yanked the sign out, forwarded the link to Michael, and left a sarcastic voicemail on their hotline. By mid-morning, Linda returned with 2 strangers, eyeing my roof from the property line. My porch camera recorded it all. An email from Friends of Coastal Defense claimed my cabin was under environmental review. I forwarded it to Michael, who said, "She's fishing for a loophole." 2 days later, county inspectors arrived about a compost bin leak. I showed them the sealed, approved bin. They left, hinting at HOA overreach. I filed a counter-complaint with the county, submitting my binder and requesting a hearing. Linda's lawyer, Martin, offered a settlement with a confidentiality clause. I sent it to the clerk as attempted coercion. The tide was turning. At the hearing, Michael and I presented our evidence deeds, permits, photos, and FAA warnings. Linda and Martin offered a crayon-drawn map and weak claims about community rights. The committee ruled in my favor, banning HOA interference and warning of sanctions. Linda's face fell. Martin mumbled about appeals. 2 days later, her newsletter spun the loss as county injustice, accusing me of intimidation. I gave everything to a local journalist. Her article, "When an HOA Tries to Steal a Beach Cabin," went semi-viral. Former HOA members apologized, some with lemon bars. Peace returned. The final straw came with a backhoe and construction crew, claiming to build a wellness path on my land. Their permit was fake, stamped with Linda's signature. Michael arrived, shut it down, and took Linda in for forging documents. She claimed it was a mistake, but the evidence was ironclad. She was charged with fraud, trespassing, and misuse of resources. Her HOA role was suspended, and her allies turned on her. Rumors said she moved inland. The county confirmed my cabin's protection, adding it to an oversight list. Michael framed the letter, hanging it beside a photo of my grandfather. I rebuilt the dock, repainted the porch, and planted seagrass. On weekends, Michael's family visited. One evening, as the wind chimes sang and the sun sank, I sipped iced tea, knowing I'd guarded not just land, but history. What do you think? Have you faced bullies or injustice like this? Share your thoughts in the comments. Did I do the right thing by standing my ground, or should I have compromised? Let's talk about standing up to power and protecting what's yours.